What's up, people? So I was having work out there, and all kind of things start running through my brain as I was getting pumped and sweating and shit like that. So there's a couple of things that have gone through my brain lately. I was already trying to postpone this idea, but now it's too much in my head, so I just have to get over with it. And the easiest way I can do it is just talk about it. So I recently read a comment on a Finnish metal music board, imperiumi.net, about a review which I had written earlier. It was a retro metal album from a Finnish band called Mausoleum Gate, which I actually reviewed already here. I don't know in which order these videos will be out, so it might not be out yet by when this video hits your screens, but nevertheless it will be there at some point. So the feedback was basically, why do I hate or dislike retro heavy metal so much? This was a feedback from a person that I vaguely know, and he was basically saying this opinion because not only Mausoleum Gate but some other retro heavy album I had given quite a, how to put it, average review score. I didn't, like smash them. I didn't, like them. I just basically gave them really mediocre score, and this probably led to the very question. Now, I'm not denying that there's certain truth to this comment, this feedback, but I also want to state that it's by no means it's a full truth, because it is not. It's more complicated than just liking or disliking a particular genre of music, especially when it comes to metal music, which just happens to be my passion. Now the thing, retro is such a strong word that for some ears it's basically a sort of curse. It's a swearing word. Some people just hate it when it's retro. Meanwhile, to some people it's just a great way to get back into their youth or even childhood or whatever. It's a way to time travel, basically, to an age or an era when certain type of music were done. Not to mention all other formats of art or entertainment. But this time we're talking about music, strictly music, and even more strictly metal music. So retro music, in essence, is just a way to try to accomplish certain type of music which was already created past time ago. I mean, like decades ago, usually. Like if I started to make metal music, like heavy metal, that was aiming to be like 80s heavy metal, with all the style from huge hair and all that glitter or whatever. It wouldn't be genuine 80s heavy metal, of course, because we live in 2017. It would be totally retro. And this is something that people but often make mistake about. They try to, how to kind of like mix old school vibes with retro vibes. And meanwhile, there are some like similarities, or they are overlapping. It's not the same. It's one thing to, try to kind of emulate all the ages past, but yet it do with the current, era. I mean, like modern recording devices and instruments of today, guitars or, shredding stuff, or, whatever, amplifiers and stuff like that. And then there's this true way, when you actually use old musical instruments, guitars from 70s or 80s or whatever you are trying to emulate, and using those amps from those days to try to get the sound how it was done back then. Even I don't know, even use dead tapes or whatever in order to get that real vibe, as real as it can be, like 20, 30, 40 years later. Now the thing is that I don't mind which way it is done. If it's done like modern equipment but trying to get that old school feeling, I'm totally okay with it. I'm also totally okay with it if it's done the genuine way, you know, what I was just talking about. The real thing is it good? Well, this is of course a subjective matter, like as any type of entertainment, art, or I don't know, shades of color are. The thing is, if the music sucks, it doesn't matter how genuinely it is done. The same rule applies to just anything. Genuine leather might be genuine leather, but if I just hate the jacket or whatever piece of leather it is, it doesn't matter if it's genuine. If it's a genuine piece of crap, so it doesn't matter. And now back to the feedback I was getting. Even though it was just one person, it started, rushing through my brain because there was this truth in the sense that recently I've gotten quite a few old school or even retro type of doom metal or heavy metal or the combination of both these subgenres. And the thing is that most of them are not exactly good. I mean, this one thing that being back in the early 70s, being like Black Sabbath, doing the pioneer work, like creating the very basis of metal riffings, not just heavy metal, but all kind of metal. Creating those riffs, using the shitty equipment you got your hands on, and trying to figure it out what you're gonna sound, which kind of riffs are you using, which kind of lyrics are you writing, what kind of vocals you are using, and all that stuff. So being back in the 70s or even early 80s when kind of stuff like thrash metal was basically born, back then you had no one to emulate basically. You had no one to imitate. You had no one, to look up to basically like, hey, those guys are creating perfect death metal. I'm gonna do it exactly like them, only better. There were nobody. There were no bands. Black Sabbath had to take their influence from various sources. They had no other heavy metal band basically to take a look at. Like, hey, those guys are creating wonderful riffs. Why don't we make the same kind of stuff? They just had to, figure it out, do the pioneer work, walk the path, when there was no path. And back then, creating all those wonderful and not so wonderful ideas, I might add, that was part of the job. But now, 2017, like over 40 years later, almost 50 years after, the basic heavy metal riffs were first time played, it's not the same, obviously. It's basically doing the retro stuff and trying to get the old vibe back. The thing is, most of these guys were in their diapers or maybe not even born. So it's not like a nostalgia trip where you just, travel to your childhood. I mean, it's a different thing for a 60-year-old guy, making music back, which sounded like back in the early 70s, because this guy or woman, could have actually listened to this kind of music. And for him or her, it would be actually a trip of nostalgia in a way. But guys like me, 40s, if I do 70s stuff, it's not my, genuine childhood. Or yeah, some parts are, but what do I know if I'm like 2 years old? It's not the same. So the thing is, when these bands try to get that kind of a old school, this real old school genuine feeling, it would be okay if they were actually, creating good music, good songs, good albums, so forth. But the thing is that way too many of these bands are actually not only copying these ideas, but they are not doing that even, well enough to even to be compared. The thing is that they are just, trying to kind of like cutting corners That is how I feel, because many of those bands, they are not creating the new Iron Man songs. They are not creating these new War Pigs or whatever Black Sabbath or other old school band you wanna compare it to. They're just creating the type of stuff they were so much enjoying listening to that it would be okay to, kind of repeat the very patterns which were already invented some 40 years ago. And once again, I wouldn't mind if only the songs were good. But most of the time, they are not. And creating like some 10-minute long track, you really have to be a kind of a guitar wizard or a genius mastermind in order to make a great 10-minute long songs. Repeating one decent riff or few is not gonna do it, and by no means adding these kind of genuine old school sounds, it's not gonna help either. Why? Because you just sound like those mediocre bands back in the day, the ones that didn't make it, the ones that never bloomed in the Black Sabbath or Led Zeppelin or Ozzy Osbourne stuff or anything like that. It's just copying the mediocre elements. Now I know that it's gonna be sort of blasphemy when I say that Black Sabbath had a lot of not so great ideas with their songs. Some people just like it, it's like the best metal ever made, best music ever made, 5 out of 5, 10 out of 10, all that stuff. Fine, I'm totally okay with it, even though I'm not a big Black Sabbath fan. But the thing is, they also have not so great ideas. They even have not some cool albums, like listen to Technical Ecstasy and with Blue Eyes tell me that it's the best stuff ever made. I don't think so. And I think most of metal people around will agree. The thing is that there were lots of stuff which were just average crap. The kind of stuff that would not have gone through if it wasn't for having this kind of status that Black Sabbath already had established. So the thing is, mediocre stuff gets done, and it gets done and it gets released just because there's like basically not too much stuff to compete with it basically. I mean, come on, if you're a Beatles, you can just create some C-grade stuff and get it like released, and people are like, okay, this is not maybe the best stuff ever made, but at least it's Beatles. It's gonna sell 1 billion copies. But if you are a doom metal band or heavy metal band or whatever in 2017, and you're gonna do you're gonna do an album with these kind of mediocre riffs, this kind of average stuff, do you think it's gonna cut it? No, it's not. But that kind of stuff also still gets released because there are fans, be it label guys or be it just fans in the venue audience or whatever. So the thing is, I don't hate retro stuff. If it's done properly, I just dig it. I love it. But most of the time, it is not. It's just lazy songwriting. It's lazy when it comes to creating sounds, vocals or whatever. So I hope this kind of helps you to understand how I feel about it, because there will be reviews when I'm gonna present those very same albums here as well, and people gonna moan about it, people gonna bitch about it, people gonna get hurt like, oh, why doesn't he understand this type of music which is so important to me? Well, if it's average stuff, it is average stuff, and it's no way out of that. And the same applies to any genre, not just black heavy metal, doom metal. It just applies to death metal. I can't stand this average death metal either, even though I listen to a lot more death metal than like heavy metal. For example, today I earlier listened to Avulsed live double album. It bored the shit out of me. Like, who the hell is going to enjoy that album besides maybe the band itself? It's just like average stuff. Don't do that. Don't release that. It's just wasting everybody's time. So this was my rant this time. If you do retro, do it properly, and I mean do it well. As always, subscribe, hate, like, comment. Let me know what you think. Why do you like retro? Why don't you like retro? What is the best stuff in retro? Let me know. Let's create a conversation out of that. Thank you for watching. Stay metal.